Well, hi, friends. Welcome back to another Kids Mental Health interview. It is a pleasure to have Samantha Christopherson with us. And Samantha is with the North Dakota Association, or I'm sorry, the Foundation for Suicide Prevention. And she's passionate about their mission. And she works to change the culture around mental health. And Samantha is a loss survivor and a mental health advocate. And I'd like to start, by just asking you why it's so important for you to be here today and to be sharing about how to help kids' mental health.
So, we do a lot of work at AFSP. It's our mission to save lives and bring hope to those affected by suicide. We're working really hard to change the culture around mental health. Personally, professionally, I am a part of AFSP. My background is in nonprofits, but when I found AFSP, it was like everything that I wanted to do with my life was kind of coming full circle. When people ask me how I'm connected to the cause, I always pause and I always ask, should I talk about my dad or should I talk about Emily? And I think it's important that I talk about both because every loss, every connection is really important. So, again, professionally, I do work for AFSP. My background is in nonprofits, but personally, I lost my dad to suicide when I was very young. I was a toddler. I'm from a very small town where there was a high stigma and we didn't talk about my dad. People avoided me in grocery stores. People didn't know what to say. And it was really, really hard because I wanted to talk about it and I just didn't understand why we couldn't. I'm a loss survivor in that way. My grief was a little bit different because I was really young and I didn't remember like my brother did or like my mom did or still does. But I also I lost my dear friend Emily to suicide when we were 14. Suicide was has just been a part of my background. Emily was active, she was creative, she was involved in all kinds of different things in school, and she was just full of life and hilarious. And it's really important to me that I talk about Emily and I share her story because I know that there's power in telling your story, and it's kind of my own personal way that I can honor Emily, and I can say her name and I can talk about her, and I can also help people. And I feel that by telling her story, we can encourage people who are struggling to get the help and support that they need, and we can normalize talking about our mental health. So again, I'm probably going off on a tangent, but I'm personally, excuse me, I do this for my dad and for Emily. But the great thing about AFSP is we're getting so many people involved and we're normalizing talking about mental health. In AFSP, we're truly a movement of all kinds of different people. So that's just my story, but we connect with so many people and we're a part of this movement of so many different stories of different loved ones and different connections, and that's why. We have this hashtag at AFSP is be the voice for suicide prevention because we know when we use our voices and we have these conversations, we change the culture, and we can save lives, and that's really powerful.
Well, I think, we appreciate your bravery to share your story. And I think that as we learn more about the organization, the efforts that you're doing to change the stigma and to help guide all of us that are watching to be aware of signs and how to intervene, it's helpful to have somebody demonstrate talking about this issue in a way that you have. And it shows us that it's okay to talk about this. And maybe this is one of the ways that we really help to change the stigma is that we're willing to talk about it publicly.
Definitely, we know that talking saves lives, and that's important.
Wow, that's a powerful note. So tell us about the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. What does it do and its mission, and what do you do there?
Great. So I love talking about AFSP, so I could talk for a very long time. So we are the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. I'm from the North Dakota chapter. So we do a lot of different work on a lot of different levels. And again, it's our mission to save lives and bring hope to those affected by suicide. So everything that we do at AFSP is we're changing the culture, we're having conversations, we're saving lives and bringing hope, and that's really, really powerful. One of the good things about the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention is we're a national organization, but we're set up of a series of chapters. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. We have that power and expertise of a national organization, but we're delivering programs on the local level. We're all over the state of North Dakota. We do a lot of programming here in Fargo-Moorhead, programming, advocating, supporting survivors of suicide loss. So that's really, really powerful. On the national level, we are known for our research. The American Foundation for Suicide Prevention is actually the top leading nonprofit organization that funds mental health research. We are the #1 private funder of mental health research. This is something that's really important because the more that we know about the brain, about suicide, the more treatments, tools, can be created. And we know, like with any other health issue, the more that we know about cancer, heart disease, diabetes, the more lives, the more people that we can help. So that's something that's really, really powerful. That's something personally that I came to AFSP because I feel like there's just so much power and research, and it's really important that when we're delivering programs that it's safe programs and they're good programs. So that's really powerful. So on the national level, we're known for our research, but on the local level, we do phenomenal things across the Fargo-Moorhead community, as well as across North Dakota. So we're a voluntary health organization. I'm the only staff member, and I cover North and South Dakota. So the majority of the great work that we do here in Fargo-Moorhead and across the state of North Dakota is by just phenomenal volunteers that want to get involved with our movement, that want to share their stories, and want to, again, change the culture around mental health. So we're active in North Dakota in a lot of different ways, as well as we are the North Dakota chapter, but we don't let a river stand in our way. We are the Fargo-Moorhead community. We do a lot of programming in Moorhead as well. But we have outstanding volunteers working to do all kinds of different things here in Fargo-Moorhead and across the state of North Dakota. So we're very active in prevention education, advocacy, and support for loss survivors. So prevention education has a special spot in my heart because I feel like that's just really important to take it a step further and make sure that we're educating about the warning signs and risk factors of suicide. So we do a lot of different programming here in Fargo-Moorhead, a lot of different programs that we can provide. A lot of our programs are focused around noticing the warning signs and risk factors of suicide and how to have really strong conversations if we're worried about someone or if we're worried about ourselves. So we have a number of different programs, and I'm going to talk about them here just because all of these programs that I'm going to talk about are completely free. We can go to churches, businesses, schools, anyone that will let us in the door, and they're really great, credited, good, evidence-based information that we can provide to our communities. So we have a number of different programs. One of my favorites, it's a newer program, but it's Real Teens and Mental Health. This is a program where we can deliver to the target group is ages 14 to 18, so kind of our 7th and 8th through 12th grade. This is a great program. We really talk about what is mental health, right? Because mental health is kind of this umbrella term, but what is it? And then we talk about the warning signs in ourselves and in our friends. So if we're noticing these warning signs in our friends, but also because we can be advocates for ourselves and we can notice changes in ourselves, we go over the warning signs. So we talk about talk, behavior, and mood. And then we talk about having a conversation is awkward and having a conversation is scary, but we really need to seize that awkward and have these really strong conversations, because the more that we talk about mental health, the more normalized it's going to be. We need to get rid of all of that embarrassment because we all have mental health. So I'm getting all excited, but It's Real is a program that we can deliver to 14 to 18-year-olds, free to schools and to districts. We talk about mental health, we talk about the warning signs, we talk about how to have strong conversations, and then we go over the what if factors, or the strategies of what if we don't know how to. So we talk about, what if my friend promised me not to tell anyone, or what if I know that my friend is hurting themselves, or what do I do if I'm just so overwhelmed and I don't know how, like, this is a lot of work, or who are some trusted adults that we can talk to when we're struggling. So if you can't tell, I really, really like this program. It has a special place in my heart, just because I think it's really, really important. But that's one of the many programs that we can deliver to our communities. So again, AFSP, we're very active on the national level. We're active in research. On the local level, we're very active in prevention education, going to schools, businesses, churches, talking about warning signs, risk factors, and having strong conversations. It's Real is only one of the many programs that we can offer. We also offer these at no cost. It's Real is one. Talk Saves Lives is also a really popular program. I like Talk Saves Lives because, for lack of a better words, it dumbs down a very complex topic so we can all understand and talk about it. So we talk about the warning signs, risk factors, we talk about how we can be proactive, how we can take care of ourselves, and then we talk about, if we need to have a strong conversation, how do we do that? So that's again another great program. We also have It's Real college students. So I talked a little bit about It's Real teens, but It's Real college students, it's a lot like the teens, but again, for our college aged group, this is a little bit different. It's more of a film, and then we have a discussion, and it's college students talking to college students, and these are all college students that have personally struggled. They're kind of away from their normal routines, back on campus. How do they take care of their mental health while kind of on campus and kind of away from home? That's really powerful. We can deliver that to any university in North Dakota, virtually or in person. So again, we're very active in prevention education. We also have a very new read along story, Gizmo's Possum Adventure, and I say possum because he's a dog and he has paws, and I think it's really great. This is a book that we can read to kindergarten to fourth grade students, and it's suicide prevention before suicide prevention, right? So it's about acknowledging how you're feeling. If you're feeling sad or if you're feeling angry, what are some things that you can do to make yourself feel better? Or who is someone that we can talk to when we're not feeling like ourselves? So it's suicide prevention before suicide prevention, safe coping mechanisms. And that's just a read along story. So we can provide that to, we can have a volunteer come to your classroom, or we can just send you a book and make sure you have that as kind of your classroom library. So research on the national level, local level. It's probably my favorite, so I talk about it a lot, prevention education, because there's power in that. We're also very active in advocacy. We help our advocates across the state of North Dakota connect with their legislative leaders, tell their stories so they can make strong asks when it comes to mental health legislation. We're also very active in support for loss survivors. If you've lost a loved one to suicide, you know that it's a very unique type of grief, and it's so important that loss survivors have the hope and the support and the connection that they need to begin their healing journey. So we do a lot of that work in that realm as well, so loss survivors know that they are supported, they're not alone. We actually have International Survivors of Suicide Loss Day. It happens all over the world, all over the country, but we are hosting it here in North Dakota on Saturday. So if anyone is listening and you've lost a loved one to suicide, please join us. It's a great day of hope and healing and connection. You can register at afsp.org/North Dakota. And it's a great day to feel connected and feel supported. So I think you asked me one question, but I went off on a tangent. What was the question again? I'm sorry.
Well, it was about what the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention does, and I think you gave us a really great summary. A, you've shared your personal story of loss, which has, gravitated you towards this mission, which you're a perfect spokesman for because of your passion and understanding. That the local chapter is volunteer ran, and it's connected to the national organization, which is doing research, which is very helpful. But that filters down into prevention, education, and advocacy, and that you've got programs that can go to anybody watching. If you've got a school, if you've got a church, if you've got a business, that you can go and you can bring these programs, particularly the education prevention, starting with kids. You've got resources and materials for kids. You've got resources for teenagers, for college students, and then you've got this Talk Save Lives, which is for all of us. And I think, Sam, that might be a good place for us to go a bit deeper in. Is this is a pretty prevalent problem. So this is it the second leading cause of death in North Dakota for ages 10 to 24? So the second leading cause of death in our state is suicide. And if anybody's watching or listening to us, if they haven't experienced this, I think part of our discussion here is that we can make sure that they don't. But also, if you have, to know that AFSP has resources for you. Well, let's dive a bit into prevention and what you cover. So, Talk Save Lives, can you share with us, Sam, some of the points that, for a teacher, a coach, an educator, or a caring adult, what are some things we should be looking for? And how do we have a tough conversation?
Great, great. So, one thing that I should note is suicide is complex. There's multiple things happening at one time to create an experience of hopelessness and despair. There's no one single cause for suicide. So, there's multiple things happening at one time. But suicide is preventable, and that gives me hope that we can deliver these programs and again change the culture around mental health. So, what we do with a lot of our programming is we talk about the warning signs and risk factors of suicide. So there's a lot of different backgrounds when it comes to mental health and suicide prevention. Some people are at greater risk for suicide than others. There's environmental factors, there's historical factors. There's all kinds of different factors when it comes to suicide risk. So it's very important that we be mindful of those factors, so that we can educate more people. But talking about the warning signs, these are observable signs that we can pick up. These are signs that we can pick up and see that someone might be at risk. So they're really displayed in three main ways that we can detect. So talk, behavior, and mood. So if someone is talking about suicide either indirectly or directly, they might say it in passing, they might say it as a joke. The point is, if they're talking about suicide, we need to take it seriously every single time. And one of the parts that we talk about in the It's Real Teens program is, well, what if they're just joking? Like, what if they're just say it as a joke? But we also know that talking about mental health and talking about our struggles is really hard. And humor is a coping mechanism, right? So there might be a person that says it, specifically a young person that says it as a joke because they don't know how else to start the conversation. So when someone is having these conversations, when they're talking about suicide as a joke or directly, we need to take it seriously every single time. So talk is really one of those main areas that we can focus on. So maybe they're talk about they feel like they're a burden to others. Maybe they talk about being in unbearable pain, whether it's emotional pain, physical pain, spiritual pain. So if they're talking about these things or being in pain or feeling like they're a burden, we need to have a conversation. So talk is one, behavior is one. So if someone is acting, if you just feel it in your gut that they're not acting like themselves, maybe they're acting more recklessly than they normally would. Maybe they're engaging in different just reckless behaviors. They're not acting like themselves. They might withdrawing themselves from activities that they would normally really love and enjoy. So if you have a student that is, really into basketball, but it starts not wanting to practice or go to games, that's that's a sign. As well as sleeping habits, right? So maybe sleeping too little, sleeping too much, or maybe just feeling tired all the time. So talk, behavior, and mood. So someone might experience changes in their mood. Maybe they're feeling more anxious, maybe they're feeling more aggressive, maybe they're just, again, when it comes to these warning signs, we want to just trust our gut. And if we just feel like something is different with our loved one or something that we care about, we need to have a strong conversation. And there's also this kind of this old process when it comes to talking about mental health, and this myth that I just want to tell everyone in the world. We know that it's safe to talk directly about mental health and suicide. So there was kind of this old idea that if you talked directly about suicide and asked directly about it, it would plant a seed. I can assure you that is so far from the truth. We know through research it's the best thing to do to ask directly about mental health and ask directly about suicide. By having a strong, honest conversation, we can gauge their level of distress. We can get them to resources. And even if suicide is not a problem, they will feel comforted. They will know that they are supported and that you are a trusted person that they can come to when they're struggling. And having these conversations help you gauge their level of distress. If they are thinking about suicide, we need to get them the help and the support that they need. So again, just to sum it up, look for changes in talk, behavior, and mood. If you feel like in your gut there's just something wrong, have a strong conversation. Strong conversations save lives. And then also, just to note, if you're ever just hesitant and not sure if you should reach out to someone, again, it's always a good idea to have that conversation. They'll feel comforted and supported knowing that you took the time to have that conversation.
Well, Sam, can you share with us, for all of us that are watching, when we notice talk, behavior, or mood, and we feel in our gut we should have a conversation. Can you walk us through some ways to maybe even open that up or start that? And I know that some of that might be age dependent, but for this particular audience, focusing in, on this number, I mean, 10 to 24, the number two cause of death. This is serious, and so we've got to do something as healthy, caring adults. Can you give us some tactics and some strategies to begin a conversation about mental health and suicide?
So there's a great PSA campaign. I encourage you to check it out. It's seasleyawkward.org. And I think it's a great, kind of great summary of talking about mental health is awkward, right? But we need to have these conversations. Anyway, so there's, if you go to seasleyawkward.org, you can actually watch a lot of YouTubers and influencers talking about why talking about mental health is important. And these are some of the clips that we use when we do It's Real in the high schools. Um, some of it, I think it's important because these clips are a lot of people going, um, uh, they start it with, I don't know how to start this conversation. But the point is, it doesn't have to be this beautiful, poetic, scripted. It's pretty much just, hey, I noticed something is different about you. I care about you. um I'm here for you. So when we're having these conversations as humans, it's really hard. But we have to do more listening than talking, right? Like we need to be in a space of wanting to help and not judgment, and really just listen to the person who's having the conversation. um Help them feel supported, and then through that conversation we can judge their level of distress and get them to resources. So when we're having these conversations, again, we want to do more listening than talking. And I know that's hard for some of us, right? We want to listen with the intent to understand and not fix right away. And again, as humans, that's really really hard. But it's important. We want to listen to their story. We want to come out of a space of no judgment. Really encourage them to tell that story, know that they are supported. There's also some things that you can kind of stay away from, that it's not as helpful. So like, let's take, if someone was having a heart attack in front of you, it wouldn't be your first instinct to tell, you have to eat less red meat, you need to exercise. No, that's not helpful. If they're in a crisis, that they need to be led to resources, they need to be led to help, they need to be listened to, they need to be supported. So some of that stuff just isn't helpful at that time. So when you're having these conversations, again, you can go to seizetheawkward.org for some helpful prompts. These are some of the things that we do in the classrooms. But having a conversation sometimes is scary. It's sometimes awkward, but we need to seize that and still have these really important conversations. And again, just to recap, it doesn't have to be this beautiful, poetic. It's just can be, hey, I've noticed this. How are you doing? I noticed you're not acting like yourself. How are you? And it might be, maybe the person isn't ready to talk about it. Maybe they're just not in a space to tell their story. You can also say, when you're ready, I'm here for you. And when you do want to talk about it, I'm here for you. And keep checking in. And of course, that's when we're having a general conversation. At any point, if you feel like someone is actively in crisis, of course we need to call 911. We need to get them to services, but that is if they're actively in crisis. Again, I went off on tangent. What was your question? I'm so sorry.
There are no tangents. There are trails of wisdom that you've provided us. And so, I think this is incredibly important to spend some time in this prevention area is, um, when an indicator light goes off in our mind, or we just have a sense, and particularly we're seeing talk that's negative or dim. Certainly, if it's directly about suicide, we see behavior shifts. They're not as active as they used to be, or just the light seems to be dimming in their life, or mood, and if and they're just off, yeah, more often than they are on. Any combination or just even part of that sends this intuition that we need to have a conversation. I think you're really providing with all of us that are listening to you something valuable, which is to not ignore that impulse. If I can read your passion correctly, for even the losses in your life, these impulses become incredibly important if we can act on them before it's too late. That's the prevention side of your work. And so, to seize the awkward and to have a conversation. I wonder what you think of this thought too, that, I'm glad that you said it doesn't have to be a beautiful conversation. I think that some things that might be holding some of our audience back when they do have even just a slight indicator, which again, we're suggesting that you act on. This is about prevention. Because what does it hurt to reach out to somebody that it's not just the words? And in fact, maybe the words are the least important part, but the show of concern and love to even broach the topic that I care for you and I'm checking in on you.
Exactly. Just knowing that that person will feel supported, that you're taking the time to have that conversation. And something that we talk about when we're doing It's Real, which is the program for teens. We talk about when you go to, so if you're noticing the warning signs, if you're a young person, you're noticing the warning signs in yourself or in a friend, and you go to a trusted adult, the trusted adult is going to be so proud of you. Talking about this is really scary and important and mature. So having a conversation about mental health, the trusted adult in your life wants to help you, is going to be really proud of you for coming forward and helping to have that conversation with a loved one.
Well, and I'm so glad that you brought this particular, issue to highlight is getting that feeling, and then having the conversation is a sign of sincerity and love for those around you. And that you've got resources from kids all the way up through adults. Now that you've been doing this work for a while, what are some of the other things that you think, were absolutely critical for us to know about suicide prevention and what we can do to change the culture?
Um, there again, it's really important that we normalize having conversations about our mental health. having a conversation about our mental health is a sign of strength, and we want to normalize having conversations. And we also want to normalize taking care of ourselves. Suicide is a health issue. It's very important that we take care of our mental health. We know that when we take care of our mental health, we can save lives and promote resilience, and start our path into recovery. So it's really important that we normalize having conversations around mental health. Every single person, everyone has a brain, everyone has mental health. The more that we're working to change that culture, we want to normalize talking about our mental health, just like we talk about heart disease, just like we talk about diabetes. We want to normalize sometimes if you're not feeling well, you're not feeling like yourself, you need to go see a trained professional, and you need to get your health back on track faster. There's a lot of different things. Treatments available if you're struggling with your mental health, medications, talk therapy. We want to encourage people to seek help and get the help and support that they need. And we also want to change the culture on prioritizing our mental health. We want to normalize taking time for our mental health and practicing self-care. Self-care is really, really important. So if we're struggling with our mental health, we want to make sure that we're we're working in on our treatments. We're seeing a therapist. We're maybe taking medications. We're having a strong support system, and we're taking care of ourselves. So when it comes to, again, mental health, we all have mental health. We all need to take care of ourselves. So when it comes to self-care, we need to do things that are good for our soul, our bodies, our surroundings, and again, we need to normalize having strong conversations about mental health.
Well, is what a gift that you've given us that, we might be overcomplicating this issue to some degree, that it's, the call for us that are watching this is to have conversations and to make sure we deliberately make time to do that. But to have a good conversation, we also need to be taking care of ourselves. And I think this is a message that we all need, is to care for our own mental health and then to be able to assist others by having these conversations, to be what sometimes might take bravery, but also maybe that's a skill where it doesn't take as much bravery after you do a few of them.
Definitely, we'll get more comfortable once we have more conversations.
Well, you've walked us through a lot on prevention and looking for the signs there. What do we do, Sam, when we're out of our depth? And so now we're in an area where it's some of the conversation, if we've had, or just some of the talk, the behavior, the mood is quite concerning to an adult watching. What are some of the things that they should do when they feel like they're in a situation where they're concerned about somebody's safety?
So when we have that conversation, it helps us evaluate their level of distress. And when we're talking to someone, we're having this conversation, we're warning the signs, and they say, "Yeah, I do struggle. I have thought about this." We don't need to, we can't waste time. We need to assure them that we're going to be a part of their support network, and we're going to get them the help and support that they need. So if you're having this conversation with someone and someone says, I do think something might be wrong, let's get them to see a trained professional. Maybe they need talk therapy. Maybe they need some medications. And something that you can do as a supportive person that cares about this person. So it might seem like it's easy for us, right, to just call a number or Google a number, but that's something that you can actively do to help someone who is struggling. So we also have I'm going to do another plug for one of our programs, but we do another program that's Introduction to Supporting Those at Risk. And this is a program for family members, parents of people who have lived experience or who have struggled. A lot of us want to be supportive. We know that's important, but we don't know we don't know what that entails, and we don't know how. So this is a great program. Again, very similar to Talk Saves Lives. We can bring it to your church, to your business. To your group, and really talk about these resources. So when we're having these conversations, we want to get them connected to resources, set them up with a doctor's appointment, get them get them involved with some of those treatments which are available. Again, talk therapy, medications, everyone is a little bit different. So treatment plans might be different from other people, but when we're having those conversations, we don't want to sit on it. We don't want to waste time. So if there's someone who says, I have thought about this, let's get them the help and support that they need. Of course, if they're actively, if you think there might be nearing a crisis point soon, we need to keep their environment safe. We need to get them away from a potentially dangerous area, and we need to get them to the ER. We need to get them to the hospital. We need to get them to the help and support that they need. So I know that it's can be very scary, especially when we're having a conversation with someone that we really, really love. But once we know, again, we know that we can talk directly about mental health and suicide. If we feel like that our loved one is thinking about it, we need to act fast, and we need to get them connected to the resources, because treatments are available. And again, we want to normalize taking care of our mental health. Going to see a therapist is just like going to see the doctor. We need to take care of our mental health just like we take care of our physical health.
Well, and I think that's a good thing for all of us watching too, is to instill the behavior of taking care of our own mental health. Is using therapy, some of these other things also sets a precedent of how to go about approaching this topic healthily, that you don't need to wait. And that's a big part of what I think we're having this conversation in your work, is to make sure that people don't get into that place where it gets that serious. And I think a real key takeaway there that you've provided us too is that if somebody is in a serious situation, that we want to eliminate any barriers that we possibly can. We don't want to force them to have to make a call or go. Or we want to get with them, take them, go with them, be a part of that journey. Sam, I have I think for a lot of us though around this issue, a major question that we have is that a phrase seems to always show up, especially when we're talking about this 10 to 25. A phrase is, we never expected that of her or from him. And could you talk a little bit about that, and maybe some of the things that we can be doing normally, that maybe we don't have our gut maybe isn't active, or we haven't quite picked up on it, but it seems that a lot of these stories it's very surprising when somebody takes their own life.
And that's something, as a loss survivor, you think of, how did I miss this? I thought they were really funny and they were doing great. And it's just really important to know that mental health and suicide is complex. There's a lot of things happening at one time to create that experience of hopelessness and despair. So that's why when we're seeing these warning signs, changes in talk, behavior, mood, they might often happens subtly. So and sometimes we hesitate to have conversations because we're not quite sure. Anytime that you're noticing these signs, we need to have strong conversations. There's a lot of work that the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention does in support for loss survivors. I know when my family needed the help and support, it's so important that loss survivors know that they're not alone in their healing journey, that they are supported, that they are that they have community. It's also really important to know that it's not your fault. That's something that's really, as a loss survivor, that's something that you hold on to. But I know that I know that Emily was sick. Their brains were not working the way they needed to work. And it's important that loss survivors get connected to the help and the support that they need to heal. So again, anytime that again, just reach out. I think I went off on a tangent again. Did I answer your question?
Sure did. And knowing that if you become a loss survivor, that it's not your thought or not your fault, and kind of let's walking back towards that, it can be a surprise, and we need to deal with that as a surprise. And I think something very important about your work that you're giving us is what we tell ourselves is really important. And if we tell ourselves negative things over and over and over again, it's really programming our brain to have more of these negative thoughts. Well, that can happen to us, and we need to be guarded on that with our own mental health. But it also seems like, what you're offering us is a pathway to be watching others to see what they're telling themselves and being on guard, because I had read a while ago that connection is incredibly important. That actually loneliness is a very high risk factor of health diseases is by being lonely. It's actually like an epidemic in some parts of our country or even throughout our country, and loneliness can cause this despair. And even if the words are not correct, or even if the therapy is not perfect, the act of us taking responsibility to show care and to connect and to give concern to another person seems to be a part of what we're trying to do here to shift the culture around mental health.
Yes, changing the culture around mental health is very, very important.
So, Sam, can you also, walk us through, so for the coaches and the teachers, and we've walked through, helping to see the signs, sort of respond, and some of the programs. But as you've gone through this over your years of experience now, what's one thing that you think that people are most surprised by when they go through this journey of suicide prevention, and also if they've lost a loved one?
There's just know that you are supported. So if you are struggling with your mental health, you might feel like you are alone. Please know that you are loved, you are supported. There's people who love and care about you here. There's community here. So just know that you're not alone. You are loved, you are supported. As well as if you've lost a loved one to suicide, again, it's a very unique lonely grief, but it's important that you know that you have community here. There's people that have been through it. There's people that support you. Just know that you are not alone. I kind of a way that I kind of explain it, which I feel like I need to find a better way, but I would have never known that AFSP. I wouldn't have understood it, the work that we do at AFSP, if I wasn't personally touched. And yet again, I personally came to AFSP when for my dad and for Emily. And it was kind of like I'm a part of this club that I never wanted to be a part of, because but it's also everyone that's a part of this movement is passionate, and they're just so they know that the importance of telling our stories and the importance of changing the culture around mental health. It's this powerful energy of people that are empowered to tell their stories about the person that they lost or their own personal struggles. There's a lot of power. There's a lot of people coming forward talking about how they have lived experience, they have personally struggled, and they're taking medicine, and they're going to see a therapist, and they're thriving today. And that's sometimes we don't hear those powerful, really powerful stories, and that's really important.
Well, and Sam, we appreciate so much your bravery to share your personal story. And it is evident that it is at work through the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, and that AFSP has great resources from kids all the way to adults, and that we can really focus on prevention by looking for talk, behavior, and mood, and having conversations. And that it's not just that a conversation that might save a life, but that love and care and concern of someone else might save their life, and also yours, by cultivating community, which creates greater stability and better mental health. Sam, is there anything else you'd like to be sure to share with our audience today?
Just as a reminder, if you've lost a loved one to suicide, please know that you're not alone. There's a lot of resources available. You can go to afsp.org/loss and get connected. Survivor Day is on Saturday, like 3 days from now. It's a great day of connection. You can register at afsp.org/North Dakota. Again, there's community here. And if you have personally struggled with your mental health, please know that you are loved, you are supported. If you see any of these warning signs in yourself, please reach out and have a strong conversation and get the help and support that you need. I also always like to talk about the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. I think that's going to be on the end after, but no matter what day it is, no matter what time it is, you can always call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline and get connected to help and support. And that's answered locally in North Dakota by First Link. So that's really wonderful. So just to reiterate, you're not alone, and there's help and there's support. So please reach out and get the support that you need.
Yeah, Sam, again, you've given us a real path for prevention, for intervention, and for dealing with loss. And we are so grateful for your work, how you've dedicated your life to making a difference in this area. And I think there's a call for all of us listening you today is that, we have choices before us. And we want to make the choice that we're going to help others and to give and to be caring, and that we need to follow these insights or flashes of intuition if we feel like something's off, to just check in. A conversation is all it might take, or several conversations, but just the expression of show and concern. And that all of us, for our own mental health, if we're in a mental health challenge, or if we're dealing with loss, that your message to be reminded that you're loved, that there is a community that cares for you, and there are resources. There's a bright future available for you, is so incredibly impactful. We thank you for coming on today, Sam. Everyone watching this live and the recording, we appreciate you. And also, we look forward to seeing you on our next Kids Mental Health webinar.
Thank you for having me.